Hi, when we build financial models, one of the key things we keep in mind is that our models should be able to answer a lot of what if kind of questions. What if revenue goes up? What if cost comes down? What if litigation comes into picture? So our model should be able to answer questions like these and give a proper output. So what we do is when we design the models, we keep all the inputs in one sheet where people can play around with the input and the outputs are in different sheet. But the problem is when you're sitting in a management review meeting, management may have this what if question while reviewing any of the sheets. So probably you're on sheet number 10 and they have a question on what if, let's say my revenue trajectory is different. So you go back to the input sheet, change those inputs, come back to sheet number 10. And again, when you go to sheet 12, they may want to go back to a different revenue trajectory. So each time you have to keep going back to the input sheet, come back to the output sheet, and it could get pretty annoying, especially when you're sitting in a review meeting. Wouldn't it be great if we can get these inputs from any sheet, at least the critical inputs? It is possible. And that's what I'm going to explain to you in this video. Right? For this purpose, I'm using this illustration that I have with me, which is on a project finance case study, what I did for training purpose. So what you notice here is I have two scenarios for my growth rates. And the end user gets to type the scenario number in cell number C29 of the ANA. That's how I name my input sheets. That's the ANA sheet, C29. So if you're choosing the scenario to be number 2, we have a certain growth rates for traffic. And if you choose the scenario numbers to be 1, we again go back to the op sheet and we see a different scenario. Now what could happen is that we want to be able to choose this scenario not just in this sheet, but let's say in the op sheet or when I'm in the cash flow sheet or in any of the other sheets. Now we can do this by using form control. So what we're going to do is rather than taking this input in cell C29 directly, I'm going to get it through form control. Form control is available in the developer tab. If you don't have developer tab, you can go to file and then options. And in your customize ribbon section, you can check the developer tab button. So once you have the developer tab, what we're going to do is we're going to insert a form control. So I'll go to the insert command. There are many form controls. Keep in mind there are form controls and ActiveX control. And I am choosing form controls here. You can choose any of the form controls. I'll go with list box. List box is what is more appropriate for categorical inputs. So I'm going to draw a list box here. Right now the list box is empty, so we have to configure it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the list box. I'll click on format control. So for the input range, I have to mention what are the inputs that needs to come. Now I have already set up a helper sheet here in which I have put these two inputs, base case, alternative case, and then Excel has to read the input. Whatever the end user clicks in the list box, it has to be read somewhere. For that, we're going to use the cell link. And what I'm going to do here is, I just showed you earlier that the cell C29 is what controls the scenario number, right? I mean, that's the input box for scenario number. So I'm going to link this cell C29 and let me click OK. So now what is going to happen is when you choose the first item in this list box, the linked cell, which in our case is C29, will return the number 1. If you select the second item in the list box, this will return number 2. In general, if there are n items and if you are going to select nth item, it will return the value n here. The beauty of the form control is that there is a two-way interactivity. This is the only element in Microsoft Excel where there is a two-way interactivity. And what do I mean by two-way interactivity? Two-way interactivity here is that when I change the form control, you notice that the cell value changes. And if I change the cell value, you notice that the form selection changes, right? You can keep playing to and fro between them. This functionality is what we're going to exploit to get the result we want. And what is the result we want? To be able to get the same input in multiple sheets. So how do I do that? So what I'm going to do is, let me copy this form control here for now. I want this in the op sheet. So I'm going to paste this form control somewhere in the op sheet. Maybe I have frozen pane, so if I paste it on top, this control would be visible. Maybe I could keep it here. I'll format this control. In the cell link, right now it says C29. Instead, I am going to link it to C29 of ANA sheet. So not any C29, we are talking specifically about C29 in ANA sheet. Click OK. So now I've got this. Let me just add a 3D formatting, which I like. And I'll also copy and paste the same form control in my other sheets wherever I want this. And here again, let me configure it to give it to the ANA sheet 29. So I'll configure this so that it goes to ANA sheet 29. So what we're going to notice is when I choose a scenario here, let's say base case. Now this base case is linked to my cell C29 ANA sheet. So it changes the ANA sheet, and therefore all my other formula automatically changes. And my other form controls also change because all the form controls are linked to the cell C29. And if you remember, I told you there is a two-way interactivity. So I can choose alternative case here, and you notice that across the sheet it goes to alternative case. So I can choose this input from any sheet I want. Right. Now that's about categorical input. What if you wanted numerical input that you want to get from any of the sheets? That can also be done, but it has to be set up in a slightly different way. So for example, here I have my construction duration, which is between phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3. I have different durations. Let's for a moment assume that I am trying to play around with these construction durations in different sheets. So here I have it. Now what I'm going to do is in my capex sheet, perhaps, because I would like to track it here, I would like to track it in my funding sheet in many places. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to link those cells here. So phase 1 duration, phase 2 duration and phase 3 duration. For now I'll just do it for one of them, even though we can set it up for all of them. So I'm going to link this phase 1 duration to equals 340. And I will eventually replicate this calculation across multiple sheets. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to the developer tab and I'm going to insert a spin button. You could insert a spin button or you could insert a scroll bar. Now what I'm going to do is I'll right click on the scroll bar, format control. So a spin button can be used to take inputs in numbers. So when you click up, the value will go up, and when you click down, the value will come down. So we're going to configure this here. We're going to say the current value is 340. This number can be probably, I think, can be anywhere between 180 to let's say 540. And each time an individual clicks on this spin button, I want this to increase by let's say 10 days. And what is the linked cell? The cell link, I'm not going to choose cell C6 or C5 in this sheet. I'm rather going to change it to cell C8 in our ANA sheet. So what is going to happen is when the end user plays with the spin button, it is going to change our values in cell C8 of the ANA sheet, and in the capex sheet it's linked to cell C8. So we'll see how it works. So when I increase it, you notice that the numbers are changing here. So the end user feels like they're typing the input here, but actual input is being changed in the ANA sheet and it's getting linked here. So this way, we can also put the spin button in multiple sheets, whichever sheets you want the end user to play around with the same input, and we can get the numerical inputs also across multiple sheets. I hope you found this video very useful, and I hope you can enrich your model, the user experience in your model, by using this technique. See you next time. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.